Hello, it's a very lovely good evening and welcoming each and everyone. So we are going to start today's session where we left up with, first of all, let me recapitulate it. And if I distinctly remember, actually, at that time we were discussing stock and data systems, so we shall continue from there on. So today we are going to pick up some questions and then we are going to what we call supplement the discussions which we have had in the last session, correct? So now, first of all, we are going to pick up question number 24 so that we can understand the basics of this particular topic and which will stood in good stead later on to understand the what we call important and significant questions. Question number 24, this is the first one which we are going to take in the first session of the today's class. So, Lakes Limited, this is question number 24 which we are picking up. Lakes Limited sent goods to its Rutland branch at cost plus 25%. That is given to you, and from the following particulars, prepare branch stock account and branch adjustment account and branch profit and loss account too. Opening stock at branch at invoice price is given, then we have been given goods sent to branch, then loss in transit at invoice price, then theft at invoice price, then loss in weight, then sales, then expenses, then closing stock at branch at cost to branch, and claims received from insurance company for loss in transit by the head office. If you remember, under stock and data system, actually, stock and data system, this is still continuing, stock and data system. Stock and data system, this is the second part of the stock and data system which we are going to start today. Under this part, actually, we are going to do some practical questions, correct? So first of all, as I told you, we are picking up question number 24. Question number 24. As you know, under stock and data system, we are supposed to prepare branch stock account. So we shall prepare branch stock account, branch stock account, branch stock account. Then, besides branch stock account, we shall prepare branch adjustment account, branch adjustment account, branch adjustment account, branch adjustment account. This is your branch adjustment account. Then we shall prepare branch profit and loss account, branch profit and loss account, branch profit and loss account, branch profit and loss account. Then we shall prepare branch debtors account, but in this question actually we need not require to prepare branch debtors account. Why? Because if in the question opening and closing debtors are not given, even I talked about this particular aspect when we were taking the sessions related to debtor system. So if opening and closing debtors are not given in the question, it means all the transactions are in cash. There is no point what we call in preparing branch debtors account. Is it clear to you? So now, first thing first. This is an invoice question, no doubt about that. Lakes Limited sent goods to Rutland branch at cost plus 25%. So first of all, you are going to prepare the rates. Now, rates analysis. As far as rates analysis is concerned, what you are supposed to do, you have to look very carefully that rate is given either on cost or on what we call invoice price. In this case, rate is given on cost. So, first of all, you are going to write cost plus margin is equal to invoice price. You must remember that invoice price and selling price are one and same thing. Since rate is given on cost, we shall presume cost to be equal to 100 and margin will become 25 and invoice price is 125. Now, you write margin in the numerator 25 and write in the denominator 125. This is your rate of loading on invoice price. In accounting language, we would call this rate as rate of loading on invoice price. What does it mean? It means if you are going to apply this rate on an item which is at invoice price, then that item will get converted into cost price. That is the meaning of this particular rate. And we always need rate, as we had seen, in fact, even in data system, that we have to compute the rate of loading on invoice price. Now this rate will be applied to items which are given at invoice price to find out loading, that is to find out their cost price. However, from next time onwards, you make a part of your habit to compute simultaneously rates of loading on cost price also. In order to compute rate of loading on cost, you will write margin in the numerator and in the denominator you are going to write what we call cost price. I would call it rate of loading on cost price. Now what is the use of this particular rate? Use of this particular rate is that if an item is given on cost, you will apply this rate on that item and that item will then be converted into invoice price. That is the use of this particular rate. However, most of the time we would always need what we call rate of loading on invoice price. But in rare circumstances, we may need this rate. When, how, that I will let you know in a short while. Don't worry about that. So, however, at this moment, focus should be on this particular rate, correct? You must not let it skip out of your memory that questions which are on invoice price, correct? I had told you, and again I am reminding you that information which would be given below in the question, that shall always means items are at invoice price. Is it clear to you? So now we are going to take the first item, which happens to be opening stock, and opening stock is at what we call 5,000. So in branch stock account, I am going to write opening balance. Opening balance of stock given to us is 5,000. So I am going to write here 5,000. This is at invoice price. Under this system, we are going to write the loading, but we are going to write the loading on the opposite side of branch adjustment account. So in the branch adjustment account, I will write load on opening stock. Load on opening stock. Opening stock is 5,000. This item is at invoice price. So I'm going to apply the rate 1/5 to get the loading. Loading is 1,000. So now it means the cost price of opening stock is actually 4,000. Now goods sent to branch, it is 20,000. So I will write here goods sent to branch 20,000. Since nothing is given, whether this is at cost price or at invoice price, you must presume that it is at invoice price. That's the point actually I was talking about. Anything which is given below in the question with respect to goods shall always be at invoice price. Is it clear to you? Shall always be at invoice price unless and until I am going to add something extra to it. Correct? Goods sent to branch is 20,000. We are going to move over to the credit side of branch adjustment account. We are going to write here buy goods load on goods sent to branch account, and 20,000 it is. You will multiply it with 1 by 5 and then you will get 4,000. Is it clear to you? That is 4,000. Now, the next point is loss in transit. If you remember, we talked a lot about abnormal losses and normal losses. Correct? Now, loss in transit and theft at invoice price are examples of abnormal losses. Abnormal losses are put on the credit side of branch stock account. Abnormal loss. Abnormal loss is loss in transit 2,500 and theft 1,000. So total abnormal loss is 3,500. It means it is abnormal loss of goods. Now, since these goods have been lost out, so we are not going to realize the profit or the margin which is included in it. That is the reason actually on to the debit side of branch adjustment account, I would write load on abnormal loss. Abnormal loss is 3,500 and loading in it will be 1,000. Into 1 by 5, loading will be equal to 700. And then abnormal loss at cost price, abnormal loss at cost is written in the profit and loss account. If you remember, I talked a lot about the fact that profit and loss account is always prepared at cost price, isn't it or not? So 2,800 we are going to actually write here. Is it clear? Then it is given loss in weight. Now loss in weight, it is also written normal. So it is a case of normal loss. So I am simply writing normal loss. You can directly write loss in weight just to actually make the point more specific and more clear. So loss in weight in this question is 500. So first of all, we are going to write down here. When I am writing it down here, what does it mean actually? It means actually these many goods have been lost out. So we have sent 20,000 worth of goods to branch. So we have to show by way of accounts that how many worth of goods have been received by the branch. That is the reason actually abnormal losses and normal losses are put on the opposite side of goods sent to branch account. Now it is a loss, but if you remember, I talked about this particular fact that normal loss is not split. Normal loss is completely shown on the debit side of branch adjustment account. Sorry, actually I wrote it over here. Entire normal loss will be reflected on the debit side of branch adjustment account. Is it clear to you? There is no need to compute loading on it. Normal loss completely you must debit it to the branch adjustment account. Reason is that anything which is related normally to the business is always charged to the branch adjustment account. Correct? Then we have got in this case sales. If you remember, in this particular method, both cash and credit sales are written on the credit side of branch stock account. Logically in accounts, if nothing is mentioned with respect to sales, we always presume that sales are on cash basis. We always presume that sales are on credit basis. But in this question, opening and closing debtors are not given, so these sales must be cash sales. Correct? Sales in this case given to you is 25,500. So you are going to put it over here, 25,500. Then we have been given expenses. Expenses are written onto the debit side of branch profit and loss account. So you are going to write expenses. Expenses are worth rupees 8,000. You are going to write them over here. Then we have been given in this question closing stock. Now this is the line actually I would like you to pay attention to, because this is the line which could otherwise provide some confusion to us and which we do not want. Closing stock at branch at cost to branch. Closing stock at cost to branch. Now please pay attention. Suppose in the question it is given a stock, just a stock, say 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Opening stock or closing stock. Just written stock. Then you shall always presume it to be at invoice price. If in the question it is just written opening stock or closing stock and nothing is mentioned that it is at cost price or what we call invoice price, then you shall always presume it to be at invoice price. Now suppose it is written as follows, a stock at cost, then it means it is at cost. Then it is at cost. Suppose if in this question it would have been written closing stock at cost, only this much would have been written. If in this particular question it would have been written closing stock at cost. Suppose if in the question it would have been written closing stock at cost, correct? 6,000 rupees. It means, please pay attention, I am telling you time and again, if nothing is mentioned with respect to goods in the question, we always presume them to be at invoice price. That is for sure, correct? No confusion should arise over there. But if the question is specifically mentioned that closing stock is at cost, then definitely now I cannot treat it as at invoice price. In that case, I would have written this way round. See here. I would have written closing stock this way round. Closing stock at cost 6,000. I have already told you this account is prepared at an invoice price. So now you will have to convert it into invoice price. An item of cost, you will have to convert it into invoice price. So now what will you have to do? You will have to take the help of this rate. You got my point or not? That is the reason why I am telling you actually. Now you make it a part of what we call computing rates, both on invoice price and on cost price, because often and quite rarely also we may need the help of this particular rate. Suppose if in the question it would have been written closing stock at cost, then in the branch stock account I would have written stock as follows. Closing stock at cost, and I would have added 1/4 of it, then it would have become the invoice price, 7,500. That means invoice price of closing stock is 7,500. And its loading I would have written over here, closing stock loading. Now it is invoice price, so in order to compute the loading, I will use the rate of loading on invoice price, which happens to be 1,500. Is it clear to you or not? But in this question, let me see actually whether it is given at cost price or at invoice price. That you will decide now. This is one situation, this is second situation. Now suppose it is given this way round. Stock at cost to head office. If it is given this way round, then again it means it is given at cost. Now suppose it is given this way round. Stock at cost to branch office. Now, if it is given this way round, it means in this case, stock is at invoice price. Is it clear to you or not? Because what is written, because stock at cost to branch. Remember one thing. Suppose head office sends goods costing 100 to branch at an invoice price of 125. So branch is receiving the goods at a price of 125. Now that is a cost from the viewpoint of branch. Is it clear to you or not? So that is the reason if it is given in the question that stock at cost to branch office, so don't get confused, it means again the item is still given given at invoice price. Is it clear to you or not? So in this case, closing stock is at invoice price, not at cost price. So closing stock, it is at invoice price, not at cost price. So you will directly write 6,000. You will write the loading of closing stock onto the debit side of branch adjustment account, that is 6,000 into what we call 1 by 5. Rate of loading on invoice price 1,200. Is it clear to you? Now, it is also given claims receipt from insurance company for loss in transit by head office. If you remember, we talked a lot about this particular fact. Any income which is driven by an enterprise not due to sale of its product is treated as indirect income that is reflected in the profit and loss account. So claims worth rupees, claims from insurance company worth rupees 2,000 shall figure on the credit side of profit and loss account. Correct? Now we are going to tell you what we call this particular account. So if I am going to tally it, what will be my balancing figure? Balancing figure is appearing on this side. I told you the first preference is given to opening stock, but opening stock is given in the question. Second preference is given to goods sent to branch. That is also given in the question. So I will be left up with no other alternative but to reflect this particular item as surplus. So this is my third preference which I am going to exercise. So 10,500 is the amount of surplus. Is it clear to you? So 10,500. I told you actually that if there would be deficiency is treated like abnormal loss, that is loading is written on the debit side and deficiency at cost is written on the debit side of profit and loss account. But surplus is directly taken to the credit side of branch adjustment account. Surplus is not split because surplus is considered as normal activity of the business and all the normal activities are reflected in the branch adjustment account. Is it clear to you? Now I am going to actually tally branch adjustment account. Branch adjustment account will let me know my gross profit. So gross profit in this case happens to be this much. Gross profit carried down. How much is the gross profit? That happens to be 13,100. So 13,100 you are going to write down over here. And then we are going to write gross profit brought down. Gross profit brought down is 13,100. And then we are going to pick up our net profit. So that is the basic advantage of this particular method, that under this actually you can compute your gross and net profit simultaneously and separately. Is it clear to you? So after picking up this particular question, now I am going to pick up question number 27 that will help us in understanding the concept in a far better manner. So question number 27, which I am going to pick up, but for that we will have to stop for a while actually, then we are going to start the next session. Just a minute, just a single minute. अरे यार ये क्या हो रहा है?